How aggressive are we expecting the Fed to be? Because we heard the shock and awe idea. Yeah. Is 75 basis points even a point here?
Well, certainly some people think it could be, but isn't it interesting, Sherry? Think back about 3 months ago after the March meeting. We were just starting to talk about 50 basis point hikes, maybe, right? Now they're baked in, and again, even 75 is on the table. But let's take a look at this, because what this shows us is that the markets are now not just looking for a 50 basis point rate hike at this May meeting. They're looking at 2 more, the 2 subsequent meetings. In fact, the markets are now pricing in about 2.9 percentage points of Fed rate hikes. That will be quite a move, and they're seeing it by the end of the year. A 75 basis point rate hike would certainly help them get there faster, wouldn't it? But I think here's what you have to consider when you figure out just how likely this is. Number one, there is no Federal Reserve official who has actually called for it now. Jim Bullard, president of the St. Louis Fed, said it could be an option if needed. Greenspan did it in 1994, he said. It worked well, but it's not his base case at this point. Loretta Mester, Cleveland Fed. She favors more methodical moves. That sounds like 50-50 and some 25s, not a 75 basis point shock. Charlie Evans, Chicago Fed, 50 basis points at this meeting, fine, but he doesn't see more than 50 basis point hikes needed down the road. Bloomberg Economics, interestingly enough, does see a decent chance, they say, of that 75 basis point move, because Powell's been talking about a labor market that is too tight, and we've recently seen record wage increases. We've seen record new job openings, 11.5 million. There's a lot of demand for jobs, not enough workers who want to go fill them. So this is keeping pressure there. And one more thing about the Greenspan 75 basis point hike, because that hot labor market could argue for shock and awe. Being behind the curve and inflation at 8.5% year over year could argue for this more shock and awe move. Alan Greenspan did it in 1994 at the November 15th meeting. What had happened prior to that? Well, they had to skip the September rate hike they needed to do, because they were too close to the presidential election. So they held off, and then right after that is when they added on 25 basis points to do a 75 basis point hike. They had a couple of 50 basis point hikes before. Are we in that situation now, Heidi? I think a lot of people say no. That's why it's not going to happen at this meeting, and maybe not in the future, but we'll want to get signals from Powell to see if maybe there's a chance it could.
Yeah, so that all-important press conference, what are we watching for? What are we expecting?
Well, we're certainly expecting a lot of tough questions. And I think if you want to kind of, click them off on your fingers. Inflation, how worried about are you, Chair Powell? What are the chances that it is going to peak and come down as much as you need to be at the peak of rate hikes by the end of the year? What's your neutral rate target? Is it 2.5%? The market's looking for something. Some people are saying 2.8%, 2.9%, even 3%. Also, the odds of recession. A lot of people are worried that because you're going to have to do so much, so many voices, so many top economists saying that it's most likely if you have to slow the economy enough to halt inflation, you're going to tip it over into recession. And in fact, former Fed Vice Chair Randy Quarles, speaking in a podcast today, said that the Fed is not going to be able to achieve the soft landing just for those reasons. He does see a recession in the cards. And in terms of the 75 basis point rate hike, he will be asked about that, I would assume, at least a couple of times. If he says something like, well, we'll see if it's needed, and maybe says, if inflation doesn't peak, but if he talks about methodical moves, as Loretta Mester did, most people are going to take that as a signal that he maybe won't rule it out, but he definitely is not looking forward to doing that unless it's absolutely needed, and we have to wait to see how that works out.